Hello everyone, just Goran here, and today we are taking a closer look at some of the items I made for the Tharmachati Zoo Poo-Poo Paper Park. Yes, I was invited by Iben and Mike to build something for their zoo. This was the first time someone had asked me to build an area for their zoo like this, and the episode is up on Iben's channel right now, so if you haven't already, be sure to give that a watch as well, since in this video we are only going to be taking a look at the items in front of you and not the full build. Anyway, let's dive right in, starting with this sign, which was the first thing I built to get the ball rolling. This sign is based on the real-life Poo-Poo Paper Parks sign, though I slightly changed it to fit Planet Zoo's pieces, like the corrugated iron roof sheet. The sign itself is made using the Arctic decorative fabric, which when recolored in the same colors actually just look like a nice piece of fabric, which has a very nice texture, although it does make it incredibly hard to select the pieces that the sign is made out of. And if you're new to the channel, you might actually not know this, but I like to make custom signs out of the 2D font pieces. By sinking these font pieces into a surface like this, you can get some very nice small shapes, lines, and whatever you want really. And this way I can make detailed signs, picturing whatever I want. This bottom bit of text was not used making the font pieces though. It's an editable sign just sunken beyond, behind the fabric, but just so that the text does show through. So I made a couple of variations of this sign, but the kind of picture that I made was always the same. I just copied that over and snuck it in. Here I added some other signs for the Poo-Poo Paper store, but yeah, nothing too fancy. So next up we have the poo. Now this was of course a very important thing to get right, which is why it was the second thing I attempted to make. And when I got the zoo from Iben, he already made a couple of baskets of poo balls using these Arctic festive bulb lights. And they are very smooth and plasticky, so I thought there must be a way to do better than that, right? So I wanted to try to get something a bit more pooey. I tried some faux rocks, but they were way too big and didn't really look right. But when looking up faux rock, you actually get faux rock tree branches, and they have a very nice small round tip when put into a basket or something. Just looks like a ball of poo, and they're recolorable of course, so you can make them look like poo. Them being recolorable is also super important for something we'll see later. So yeah, these were perfect, and all I had to do was make sure that the rose of the branch was well hidden on the ground. The downside of this was that I couldn't really put any of these branches on top of tables and such, because yeah, they do have a bit of a root. These little signs, by the way, as you may just seen, these are made out of the African bunting discs, which have a nice little thin rope, and then some font pieces on top of that. I gotta give Iben props for this though. He kind of made that card, and I just added this little white stripe to make it look like there's actually text on there. So next up we go to the next step of the poo to paper process, which is the cleaning of the poo. So we have these rinsing drums which the poo gets rinsed in, and these are made out of art shapes for the kind of dirty water, and sign bracket pieces for the drum. And yeah, not the most efficient way to do it. These are a lot of pieces, but it looks really nice, and I just like the smooth but not quite smooth texture of the sign bracket, and it just looks like a very nice round drum like that, so pretty happy with that. So after rinsing the poo, it gets boiled at 100 degrees in this pan, which is the Indian metal pan, filled with art shapes to look like a bit of a pooey, gooey sludge. And to further sell the poo ID, I again added those faux tree branches in there. I used the bubble lights that we saw earlier as kind of bubbles in the poo soup, and I used some 2D font pieces to get some extra like little pools of goo or whatever. And lastly, there are some thatch roof pieces, or well, these are actually the African hut top pieces. And I think I also, yeah, I use these decorative rocks, which have a little bit of fetch on them as well. They're nice and small and easy to hide. Well, I mean, the hot top isn't really nice. Hut top, not a hot top. The hut top is a lot bigger, but I mean, we can hide that into the flooring. So yeah, that is what all that is made out of. Those fetch pieces are pretty important to get kind of the feeling of elephant poo in there, because elephant poo is kind of just a ball of grass. So this fire over here is created using the Arctic wall light, which you can see over here. It has a little nice fire effect. And then there's just some African air plants and African branches in there to look like wood. And if you look closely, you can also see that there's a little bit of blurriness over here, which you often get when you have something hot. And that is actually made using a heater from the Habitat tab. The heater emits that little heat particle, which looks pretty cool. And a little fun side effect of that is that if you look at the temperature heat map, you actually see that the fire is hot, which I think is pretty funny. So after cleaning the poo, you get some baskets of clean poo over here, which is just the same basket of poo but recolored. I also have some other fibers because the elephant poo gets combined with coconut fiber, which is just the same basket of poo again, but then with some rope coils in there to look like coconut fiber. And then we also have a little basket of other types of fibers, and this could be like coconut or like a banana tree trunk fibers, something like that. And we have a basket of a recycled poo-poo paper. This is just a basket, and then there's a bunch of small like fun pieces to make a plane, just to look like the basket is full. And then there's a bunch of extra fun pieces, just like little snippets of paper. So all of these ingredients get mixed together with some food coloring in this machine over here, which is also based on the one at the real life poo-poo paper park. This is mainly made out of art shapes and fun pieces, as a lot of things I built are. The fun pieces are used to create all of these thin edges, but also the belt over here, which is made out of L shapes that just cleverly hidden that hook of the L in the other parts. So here it's right on the edge, and here it also goes into these large full stops to create kind of a small cylinder for the motor. The wheel over here is also just an art shape with some fun pieces around to give it that shape that it has. And yeah, then there's just some other fun pieces on top of this that give it some extra detail, like these vents and stuff like that. And there's these sign brackets. Once again, they're a very nice piece to use. I use them to get some nuts and bolts. I also used the brace brackets to get some extra nuts and bolts, just making it look a little bit more janky and industrial. And then this stool in front of the machine is actually based on this other stool that I made for my Congo Square build. Since my own zoo is at a scale, the stool was actually a bit too small to fit in nicely over here. So I created a new one that was a bit bigger, allowing me to get some more details in, like these little planks over here, which are made out of East Asia wall light brackets. So after going through the machine, you get some colored balls of poo, which is again just the same basket of poo but recolored in different colors. And these balls get spread out over these wooden kind of frame things to make sheets of paper. And this gets done underwater, which is why we have these water basins. Probably my least favorite thing in this build. I don't like how bulky they are, but these kind of East Asia water shrines were the best piece that we had in game. There wasn't really another way I could have made this. On this side of the table you can also see a little wooden section, which is where I placed the baskets on top of. And you'll note how there is actually a little bit of wall in this table so that you don't see those branches, which you would have if it was like a normal table. And the top of the table is made out of the African windows, which is pretty cool. I like how dirty it looked, which I thought was very fitting for a table on which you store balls of poo. So the screens that the paper gets smeared over gets put out in the sun to dry, like you can see over here. And these frames are made out of 1 meter planks, and again those East Asia walleye brackets. And these East Asia walleye brackets actually allow me to keep the items very small. Iben had also tried making these frames out of just the planks and making them like 1 meter wide at a minimum, which is already pretty huge. So these brackets kind of made them the perfect size in my opinion, as you can see over here. And yeah, the font pieces I used for these sheets of paper kind of hide those little bits of wood that otherwise would show up. So next up we have some gift shop items, again made out of mostly font pieces. Now of course the font pieces are very flat, so it can actually be quite hard to make them look like they're a big stack, like I tried over here. So to combat this, in these sheets of paper I kind of alternated between a dark and light version of the font piece. And this allows you to kind of distinguish individual pieces of paper, making them look like a stack. You can see over here, this was the first kind of gift shop item I built, and I didn't think of doing that quite yet, and you can see that the pieces of paper kind of just blend together. It doesn't look nearly as good as these do. Now this palette over here is put up on the wall and holds even more kind of font piece, like gift shop cards or whatever, and you can see I did the same sort of technique with the alternating light and dark. And these little hooks over here are actually made up out of the exterior outlets, which have these nice little power cables, but they look like little hooks, so that's always nice. And then the bolts on the sign are also made out of sign brackets. I actually rotated them ever so slightly so that you only have one of the circles, and you can kind of just space them out however you want, instead of having to deal with the spacing that the sign puts on you. So over here we got another cool detail of the gift shop, the poo chalkboard. Now the real life park basically has a basket of poo with a lot of these cards in it, which say the word for poo in a lot of different languages. And I really like that idea, so I wanted to incorporate it in some way, but of course making something like this doesn't really bring across the idea of writing poo in many different languages, so that's why I went for a big chalkboard. And the idea that I came up with was that the gift shop would have a chalkboard like this, and there would just be a piece of chalk here, and any guests or tourists that came by could write down the word for poo in their own language. So it started out with the Thai word, because it is a Thai zoo, and then yeah, people would start adding to that as they came along. So the initial version of the chalkboard was actually quite big and didn't really fit into the build that well, so I had to shrink it down quite a bit, losing some of the words for poo, including this drawing I made, which shows how to say poo in American Sign Language. These little drawings, by the way, are of course again made out of the font pieces. Again, just sink them in and you get a very small line you can use to make all sorts of details. The Thai word is also made out of font pieces, and the rest of the words for poo are made out of the Australia editable sign. Once again, just sink that in right behind the surface and you will still see the word. And what was nice about this was that it saved a lot of time writing all of these myself, and you can just put on a bunch of different fonts, well maybe not that one, but a bunch of different fonts, which makes it look like many different people wrote all of these words down, which is pretty cool. And the small piece of chalk over here is just a gutter cap, which is kind of a nice coincidental homage to the fact that I used to make signs out of these gutter caps before we had the font pieces. So moving on, over here we have what's probably my favorite sign I made for this project, and perhaps even my favorite sign ever. It is the sign that visualizes the poo, the paper process. So you start out with some poo, gets boiled, you have poo balls, they get colored, then you have colored poo balls, they get put on the screens, dried in the sun, and then you have poo-poo paper. This image was taken straight from the poo-poo paper website and recreated, and I think you have an idea of how I made this by now. Again, Arctic fabrics and a lot of font pieces to get all of those shapes right. And then the signs again to get the text in. But what is interesting is that I wanted the sign to be slightly thicker or slightly wider, than the Arctic fabric actually is. So I had to add 2 together. But if you would do that normally, let's actually do that over here, you would get these little rings over here, which I tried to hide by ever so slightly rotating the sign, which is very finicky, but as you can see, I ended up getting it done over here, so you don't have a little random extra ring in the middle of nowhere. So over here we have some posters made inside of the poo-poo paper frames. Again, just fun pieces and such. But what's interesting is that once again, it was quite difficult to create these signs because, actually I'll show it over here, I can't actually select any of the fun pieces because the East Asia walleye brackets their hitboxes in the way. So how I actually made these signs is I took the frame off of the kind of sheet of paper, made the sign on top of this. So let's just try to get a little line in here like that, and then I could kind of start drawing that around, and then after I was done I could put the frame back on top, and then I had my sign. Alright, we're nearing the end. We have a couple more things to show you, including these t-shirts, which were kind of based on this workshop item by Valley Lu. I'll add a link to that in the description. I edited it quite a bit. I kind of rotated these wooden pieces to get rid of some of these harsh and sharp edges, and then I added my own prints on them based on the prints on the t-shirts sold at the Poo Poo Paper Park, of course. Then over here we have a birdhouse, which is also kind of doing the same thing. It's made out of these small wooden pieces, just rotated ever so slightly to get rid of those sharp edges. And then just add a little fun piece to get a little hole in for the birds. I don't know why. So this is actually a birdhouse based on the ones at the Poo Poo Paper Park. Again, I don't know why there is a hole here, because the sides are open. Like, do birds just like going through tiny holes? Is that what it is? Anyway, the same trick of rotating those planks were used to make these tables and the stools. I actually took these tables from this table that I designed for the Congo Square build in my Beeksbergen project again. So as you can see, it is slightly smaller than 1 meter. This is a 1 meter plank, and the way I did that is by, again, building it up out of those tiny wooden trim pieces. And yeah, you can kind of see it a little bit, but yeah, they are just slightly rotated and sunken into each other to get rid of those sharp edges. And yeah, being slightly smaller than 1 meter just makes it look a little better to me. So, and since I already had the tabletop, it didn't matter all that much effort wise. And yeah, I made a couple of different variations of the tables just because I had different needs for them around the Poo Poo Paper area. And this last table has a bunch of crafting materials out of it, all made out of fun pieces. We have a kind of tub of glue made out of 3D and 2D full stops. And then we have some paper snippets. So these are, of course, just fun pieces kind of sunken into the table to look like small cut pieces of paper. We also have this little sheet of paper which has a full stop on top of it, making it look like there is a hole in it, which kind of saves on having to make that hole manually. And that's the same thing that I did for these scissors. So the blades are just these fun pieces kind of hidden into the table, and the handles are the full stops, also kind of hidden into the table to make the kind of oval shape, and then we add these brown pieces to make it look like there's a hole in them. These chairs, by the way, were taken from a blueprint pack that I made myself. It is the Congo restaurant pack. You can find that on my workshop. I needed the chair. Why reinvent the wheel? I could just take this one. Now, the last item for this showcase is the fence that I put around the Poo Poo Paper area. I wanted to create a fence similar to the one at the real life Poo Poo Paper Park, which became this plank fence over here. I thought it was a bit too tall and too clean. I wanted something a bit more naturalistic, so I headed over to the nature tab and I found these liana pieces. So yeah, these worked perfectly as some like little branches or little twigs that are woven in between these wooden poles. So I really like how that turned out. So yeah, those are most of the items I made for the elephant poo-poo paper area of Tharmachati Zoo. Now that is a mouthful. I hope you found this interesting and maybe got an idea or two out of it. Once again, if you haven't seen the Tharmachati Zoo, crap. Once again, if you haven't seen the Tharmachati Zoo episode on Iben's channel, make sure to check it out. Iben built an awesome elephant area and there is a bunch of really cool details mixed in there. Also, you get to see all these items I made in action and see the building I built around them. If you came here from Iben's video and you're new to the channel, hi, I'm just Goran. I'm obsessed with details and recreating things as faithfully as possible, which can be seen in my main Planet Zoo project, the Beekse Bergen. This is a 1 to 1.5 scale recreation of the Dutch zoo by the same name. So if you like what you see me build here, I'm sure you'd be interested in my Beekse Bergen videos as well. If you're interested in seeing more sign work, I've been recreating all the animal signs of the Beekse Bergen, which I often do live, and you can find all those streams on my channel as well. I don't really have a schedule when it comes to videos or streams, but since you're coming from Iben's channel, I suppose you're used to that. Anyway, if any of that stuff sounds like you'd enjoy it, why not hit the subscribe button perhaps? And that's enough shameless promotion out of me. Time to end this video. Once again, I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next video, stream, or whatever comes first. Bye bye!